What is up, ladies and gentlemen? But most of all, you ladies out there, thanks for clicking on another episode of Break the Silence. I am your host, Cyborg. We just watched what might be the game of the year. Let's talk about it. Split cow! We just got done watching the Dallas Mavericks versus the Brooklyn Nets in what can only be described as the best game of the season so far. We know it's early, but that was an unbelievable basketball game between two of the most fun teams to watch in the NBA. I just got back from Tennessee. While I was there, I was fiending the whole time for basketball, just shaking for it, hoping at least can I see Ja Morant to help hold me off until I get back to talk some basketball. But here we are, we're back again. And we're going to talk about this game because there was so much to it and so much to talk about. Because in my opinion, two of the most fun basketball players to watch in the NBA right now, Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving, put on an absolute show. And as many of you know, as a Celtics fan, I'm not the biggest Kyrie Irving fan in the world. And every time Luka Doncic plays us, he hits a game winner. So I'm not biased towards any of these players. But these two guys have a couple of the deepest bags in the NBA, and it is unbelievable to watch. But let's break it down because we need to talk about the Brooklyn Nets and the Dallas Mavericks. What I noticed from both of these teams, from their coaching staffs, from their players, from their stars, from their bench. We're going to talk about it all. So let's get into it. But first, please take a second to like and subscribe to the channel. You see, we are almost to 500 subscribers. I'm so pumped to get there. But let's talk about this. I think we need to start from the Dallas Mavericks perspective because this team was a very interesting squad coming into the season as they lost Jalen Brunson, added JaVale McGee, and Christian Wood. Now, Christian Wood, I think, is one of the most underrated players in the entire NBA. Shoots about 40% from three as a big man, absolute sniper, provides a lot of offensive firepower, and is big and rebounds, moves pretty well on the court. So Christian Wood, an absolute great basketball player that had been wasting away with the Houston Rockets the last few years and hadn't got an opportunity to shine. So I was really excited to see Christian Wood with a good roster in Dallas. How can he contribute to winning basketball? When you're looking at an NBA player, there are players that are really good on bad teams. We call it a good stats, bad team guy. Plenty of those guys in the NBA, plenty of those guys that we've seen over the years. And then you have guys who can then transfer over to a winning culture and winning basketball. And that's what we wanted to see from Christian Wood. And that's what we'll get to see this year because we assume the Dallas Mavericks will be a quality basketball team, one that's competing for a playoff spot and, you know, potentially a Western Conference contender. He played pretty well tonight, but the story of tonight was Luka Doncic. Luka tonight had 41 points, 14 assists, and 11 rebounds in an absolutely monster performance. Now, one thing I'll quickly hit on. If you want your career night, play the Brooklyn Nets. They're giving them out to everyone. Anyone who wants them, the Nets will give you one. So, you know, take that for what it's worth. The thing that I worry about a little with the Dallas Mavericks is when Luka's on the court, they were excellent. They were a plus 20 tonight with Luka on the court. And obviously, plus minus is not a perfect stat. None of the stats you bring up are perfect. But I do think they tell a glimpse of the story. And to me, if I watch the game and think one thing, if I watch the game and think, man, the Mavericks are really good with Luka on the court and really bad without him, and then I go look at the stats after the game, and they're plus 20 with him on the court and minus 16 with him on the bench, considering he played almost the entire game, that tells me a little bit of the story and a little bit of my concern with the Dallas Mavericks. When you're talking about losing Jalen Brunson, who was a shot creator, an ISO scorer, a guy who kind of was able to set his teammates up, and he's actually playing fantastic in New York, by the way. But I was a little concerned about this Mavericks roster. It's putting so much of a load on Luka Doncic, and he's going to have to be able to carry them for much of the season. Now, one of the things that was interesting before the season started was Luka was the favorite for MVP. And when I was making my predictions, and in a video, a couple videos back, I talked about how I thought Luka would have an excellent season, but I didn't think the Mavericks record would be good enough for him to be able to win MVP. we'll see here. They're 2-2. They just beat the Nets tonight. They're a little back and forth team, but they're going to be in a lot of games because their offense is actually being rated as the best offense of all time so far. So keep a watch on that, because when you look at ratings, and obviously these are second level statistics, but the Mavericks are so efficient and analytics friendly that offense is going to be nasty to watch and continue to keep their eyes open for them. They are really kind of the anti-Lakers is what I describe the Mavericks as. They literally took their roster and built it around Luka Doncic. They put shooters everywhere. Almost everyone that plays, except for the 12 minutes a game JaVale McGee plays, can shoot the basketball. And that's so valuable when you're talking about playing around a guy like Luka. And that's what the Lakers have done so poorly, whether you want to blame LeBron or Rob Pelinka, whoever you want to blame there. But the other thing I really like about the Mavericks, one, last year they were a pretty decent defensive team. Now, a lot of these rankings early on are a little tough to tell, so we'll wait and see there. But I like the way that they're coached. Jason Kidd has them playing hard on defense. They rotate well. They did a good job doubling Durant. And obviously Durant and Kyrie Irving are going to get theirs. They're just excellent basketball players. But they made it tough on those guys tonight. And I think when you watch the game, the difference in the Nets and the Mavericks was Luka was getting easy buckets. What they would do on offense every time, they'd have whoever Kyrie was guarding come up, set a screen. Luka would go against Kyrie. He'd try to score. If Kyrie wasn't on the court, then they would have, and they said this guy's name different every time, Utah with Watanabe. I apologize if I mispronounced his name, but they would have him come out and guard Luka, because the Mavericks were just trying to get that switch all day to where Luka could ISO on one of these little lesser defenders. And if you come in and help, he's such a great passer, he'll find the open man. If not, it's an easy bucket every time, which is what makes Luka Doncic so difficult to guard. But let's move on quickly to the Brooklyn Nets, because I think this is the big story of what we're looking at this year. They are 1-4 so far. Their defense is so porous. They give up so many easy looks. It's almost all wide open threes or wide open looks at the basket. Ben Simmons has not had the impact on this team that we hoped for to start this season. He is not playing defense at the high level that we thought. Luka actually took advantage of him. Looked like he was almost trying to humiliate him at times in the third quarter. And then offensively, Ben Simmons just looks scared to play. But the bad part about the Nets right now is that they are missing Seth Curry and Joe Harris, two of their elite shooters. And we obviously want to take that into account, because that's an important thing. And if you're telling the story of the 1-4 Nets so far, you got to remember they're without two of their rotation level players. Because at one point they had a roster, and I wrote it down. They had a lineup on the court of Kyrie Irving, Ben Simmons, Watanabe, David Duke Jr., and Edmund Sumner. Now, three of those guys, I didn't even really know who they were when they first came on the court. I had heard kind of those guys, but when you see them on the court, you're like, who is that guy? And it's the first time I've been able to watch the Nets and really sit down and break them down this year. But so they're playing some lineups with some guys that I don't know that should be on NBA rosters. Kyrie Irving tonight had 39 points, but he was pretty inefficient on 14 of 31 shooting. That's not terrible, but you'd like to see, be a little over 50%. And then Kevin Durant had 37. It was a quiet 37. That's what's so cool about Kevin Durant, is that even there are times that you're like, this guy, it doesn't seem like he's doing anything tonight. And then you look at the box score and Kevin Durant has 30-something points. That's what's so crazy about him. It's so effortless. It's so efficient. He's such a good scorer, and Kevin Durant's one of the most fun players in the NBA. But my biggest concern about the Nets is their coaching seems so porous to me. The difference in these two teams, and I kept pointing it out because I was watching the game with my friend here, and the way that the Mavericks would defend Kyrie and Kevin Durant was they would bring over late help to make the shot difficult. To where if Kyrie and KD are hitting their shots, fantastic. But those are going to be tough shots. On the other side of the court, Luka got so many layups tonight. And if you go back and watch that game, pay attention to how many times Luka got an ISO and just ended up with an easy layup. I would say at least 7, 8 times where he just had an easy layup at the basket. And if that's happening, when you account for how well the Mavericks shoot threes and all the difficult shots Luka makes, it's tough to win a basketball game when you're giving up 129 points. And obviously some of those were in overtime, so, take some of those points off there. But the Brooklyn Nets every game are giving up a ton of points and giving up career games. Last night, the Milwaukee Bucks, Giannis had 43 points against them. And then the night before, or not the night before, a couple nights ago, the Memphis Grizzlies put up 134. And then the Pelicans put up 130. This team has given up 130, 134, 129, and 43 to Giannis in their 4 losses. You have to defend at a higher level if you want to win in the NBA consistently. Yes, Kyrie's great. Yes, Kevin Durant's great. But they are not going to be able to carry the load enough to where if you're not getting stops, it won't matter. It won't matter. That's just the reality of how basketball works. If we're playing one-on-one, I can play good enough defense to where I'll stop you a little bit, even if you're a better offensive player than me. If you can't guard me and I'm scoring every time, if I'm scoring at an 80%, 90% clip when we're playing one-on-one, I'm going to win the game because I'm going to play defense enough to where it doesn't matter how good you are on offense. And that's the problem with the Brooklyn Nets. Their offense is so good, but their defense is equally as bad, which makes it to where you have these close games a lot of nights. And if it doesn't go their way with their poorest coaching in the fourth quarter, when you need adjustments and you need strategy and you need plays designed, they're not going to come through in most of those games. And that's what's scary about the Brooklyn Nets going forward. Can they be a great basketball team? They certainly have the roster to do so. But they do not play defense at the level you'd hope. And actually, Kyrie Irving played pretty hard tonight. He's just not big enough to guard Luka Doncic. You have to figure that out. And I thought Ben Simmons was going to be the missing piece with them that would be able to provide that spark defensively. But thus far, he's just not been that guy. He's so nervous on the court. He's just not playing within his skill set. If he did, that's enough. That Ben Simmons that we saw in Philly that was making all-star games, making all-NBA teams, that player's good enough to take this Nets team over the top. But he is not that guy right now. If he can return to form, great. But at this point, I have real questions about it. That's all I got for tonight. We're going to keep watching hoops. We're going to keep talking about it. Appreciate y'all watching. Cyborg out.